Hey, it's Ryan from the Carb Situation. Remember, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a trainer. I'm just a human guinea pig who likes to read a lot and willing to experiment. If you go on the journey with me, maybe you'll learn what I learned. Oh yeah, and I curse a lot. Let's do this. Hey, welcome back to another What the Fuck Wednesday. Today is the first of two-part series where I'm going to tell you the inside story about why we get fat and what to do about it. Remember to go grab this book, Why We Get Fat and What to Do About It, by Gary Taubes. The links are below. He does an eloquent job of explaining all this stuff, but let's get on with it. Okay, in this first part, I need to tell you about 4 main players in the game. Now, this is going to be a little bit science-y, but I'm going to try to make it real easy to understand the way I think about all these things. And I promise you, you don't want to skip this part, because if you understand the why, then the how becomes very easy. So, it's only going to be 5, 10, 15 minutes of your life between the two parts. Just stick with me, humor me. It's going to be great. So in this first part, I'm going to introduce you to the players in the game that make us fat. The first one I want to talk about is insulin. Insulin is a hormone that is produced by the pancreas, and its main job in your body is to make sure your blood sugar level doesn't get too high, because high blood sugar is toxic and can kill you. So in that regard, it's a good thing we have insulin, because it makes sure we don't get too high of blood sugar and die. But insulin is the main player in this game because it does a whole bunch of other little things on the side to try to help its cause, which we'll talk about in the next video. The second player in this game I want to talk about is fat itself. Now, we have a whole bunch of different kinds of cells in our body, of course. And I want you to think of, like muscle cells and fat cells, and think of the fat cell as sort of the container for fat. When the fat cell's full, you get fatter. When it's empty and goes away, then you get thinner. But a fat cell is sort of like the container for the fat. But the fat itself can come in 2 forms. The first form is called fatty acid. And fatty acids are pretty awesome. They can cruise around, do whatever they want. They come in and out of the fat cell. They go into the bloodstream, go around your body. They can go into muscles and get burned for fuel. They're a good fuel source. Fatty acids are the first form, the main form, and they're cool. The second form is when we take 3 of those fatty acids, put them all inside the fat cell with a glycerol molecule, and combine them to make what's called a triglyceride. And you've all heard of triglycerides on your blood work. Triglyceride is the 3 fatty acids with the glycerol molecule that's assembled inside the fat cell, and that is how we store fat. Now, the shitty thing about triglycerides is that they can't fit through the door of the fat cell. So they're assembled inside the fat cell, but they can't get out unless they get disassembled. So that's how we store fat, is we get 3 of those fatty acids and a glycerol, make a triglyceride, and we store it inside the fat cell. So that's fat. Okay, the third player in this game is an enzyme called lipoprotein lipase. And you can just remember LPL for short. LPL is kind of cool in that it's on all of these cells, but it's either activated or not activated. That's how I think about it. And when it's activated, it will pull a fatty acid out of the bloodstream into the cell it's on. Now, if it's on a muscle cell, it'll pull that fatty acid in and use it for fuel for that muscle. If it's on a fat cell and it's activated, it will pull a fatty acid out of the bloodstream and pull it into the fat cell so that it can create a triglyceride and store it as fat. So for our intents and purposes, if the LPL is activated on a muscle cell, it will burn fatty acids for fuel. If it's activated on a fat cell, it will store the fatty acid as a triglyceride. Our fourth player in this game is another enzyme called HSL, and it stands for hormone sensitive lipase. HSL is one of the good guys. HSL's main job, for our intents and purposes, is to go inside the fat cell and disassemble the triglyceride so that the fatty acids can get out and go be burned for fuel elsewhere. So we need this enzyme to go in and disassemble these triglycerides. So those are the 4 main players in the game, and I'm going to go over them again really quickly. So first we have insulin. That's the hormone. Comes from the pancreas and makes sure our blood sugar doesn't get too high so that we don't die. And it also does a couple of other things in our body that are a little sinister that I'm going to explain later. Our second player is fat itself. Now we have the fat cells that are sort of the storage containers, and but fat itself is either a fatty acid, which can come and go as it pleases and get burned for fuel, or we can get 3 fatty acids with a glycerol molecule inside the fat cell. They get bound together as a triglyceride, and that's how we store fat. So that's fat. Next, we have an enzyme called LPL, and the LPL decides, if it's active, to pull a fatty acid in if it's on a muscle cell, burn it as fuel, or if it's on a fat cell and it's active, it'll pull a fatty acid out of the bloodstream and store it as part of a triglyceride. And finally, we have HSL, the other enzyme that actually goes in there and disassembles the triglyceride so that the fatty acids can get back out and go be burned for fuel. So those are the 4 players that are in the game. In the next video, we're going to talk about exactly what the hell all happens inside your body to make us fat. And that's where it gets exciting, and that's where we start to get some control, some power, and some agency over what we're going to do to make sure that doesn't happen. So remember, hit subscribe, leave me some comments, tell me what you disagree with, questions, and check out the website, do all that stuff, and make sure you watch the next video because that's where it gets fun. Until then, thanks for watching. Cheers!